I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
The good Lord lets us grow old for a reason, to gain the wisdom to find fault with everything He's made.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire offshore Orion. I watched sea beams glittering in the dark near the 10 hours a game.
Welcome to Not Retired Yet. If you think you're too old for this, oh, you know the rest. I'm Lucas, I'm 52, and I need a job. I'm not alone. There are plenty of us out there across industries, across time zones, and across our virtual horizon. Older job seekers getting up each day and fighting the good fight because, well, we have to. We're not retired yet. This is a document of the diverse experiences we as older folks face as we look for work in 2025 and beyond. These are interesting times, indifferent times, uncertain times, and hostile times. With AI, capitalism, and careers in the late stages, I hope to shed some light on these and other areas of concern and happiness. I am talking to our fellow job seekers and sharing their stories and thoughts on a time when we should be planning our exit from the workforce, and instead, we're starting over. Today I'm talking with Matt from Pennsylvania. Matt is a Scrum Master and lead analyst currently looking for his next role after being laid off. I've chatted with Matt a few times on Slack, but this is the first time that I have spoken to him. In this interview, we reference a diagram that Matt has put together for his talks about leadership, and I'll link to that and some other information in the comments section of this episode. Matt has kind of spun my head around a little bit with some of his insight into such topics as Sarah Beth Burke, hybrid roles, and the Workday class action lawsuit. Matt has also been a cartographer, which I feel has a certain poetry that aligns to a job search. I guess I didn't know that you were a cartographer in a previous life. Do you see any analog between your job as a cartographer and the roles that you're applying for now?
Yeah, yes and no. Like I said, I've once I kind of I always just, oh, I'm only a cartographer. But once I kind of realized, like, well, wait a minute, I was building product using map. I was making maps to build a product. And then after, the recession in '08, our company closed. I had to find a new thing because, again, eh, if you don't learn from history, you repeat it. Cartographers have kind of gone away. I became a coder. So I was automating my work. I was doing a lot of manual stuff that I was able to create scripts that would cut down, time to build a product, to minutes instead of days. So, all right, I want to solve problems using code. I want to build product using code. And then it became, all right, now I want to build product by creating teams and helping teams and creating that environment for the teams. So there's a lot of that. But where it's kind of shifting is at a certain point, the product wasn't about the users. It was always about build the right product for the customer for what their users need it for. Make the right maps in the right ways because they're going to be using it this way. Or here's the application, here's how it's going to be used. Now, most companies don't give a dang about the customers.
That kind of maps up to what we were just talking about, as well as like the Workday lawsuit. That's bananas. I think like when I was first started thinking about doing Not Retired Yet, like I had heard rumblings of that Workday stuff, and it didn't really kind of register. But when you brought it back up, it was like, oh wow, this is really relevant. This is super pretentious
Mhm.
for what I'm talking about, what we're talking about, and what needs to be bubbled up. What are
Right.
your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear anything. I didn't know anything about it. for me, it was Workday is just one of these things. I gotta, you fill out my thing and upload your resume, and then hey, refill out your resume anyway because we screwed it up to begin with. So it was just one of those annoying tools. And then I was in a meetup with, other people who are looking for jobs called Caffeine and Careers, I believe. And they brought it up, and I was like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" And the person sent me the info. I'm like, well, okay, that explains a lot why I'm not getting interviews. Well, you it's I don't go in the expectation of actually getting an interview in a lot of these jobs because they just get so inundated. But now it's like, okay, if it's a Workday, it's like I'm not even bothering because you're filtering me out because I've thrown my resume and I just put the last few years on there, into AI and go, okay, based on this, where do you think I am in my life? And they're all like nail is like 45 to 55. And I'm like, I'm pretty much right down the middle there. So, all right, that's not good. So with that, it's like, all right, well, yeah, but they're not, and no, technically they're probably not eliminating you, but they're not putting you up for consideration in front. So because of that reason, or oh, well, they didn't have a high enough score because you deducted 1,000 points for the, for being over 40. So it it's already a tough job market, and seeing older people getting squeezed out like this is just wrong. I mean, seeing anybody get squeezed out is wrong. Anybody, whether it's, color, religion, whatever. But people with great knowledge are being shut out and almost essentially being told, you're not good enough. Your time is gone. You're put out the pasture. I'm only 50. I feel like I'm, 30. I still have many years of work, of ability to work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That and yeah, it just hits so hard
Mm.
for us. And kudos to Derek Mobley who first started the suit and started bringing it up to people's attention that hey, this is messed up. This is what's happening. Here's my experience, and it really kind of maps to a deficiency in what this AI is doing. And I'm not a lawyer or anything like that. We wouldn't be having this conversation if I was.
I was just
So,
saying.
so, yeah, having being able to present that as a lawsuit and being able to convince a judge that hey, this has merit. This should be like a class action status lawsuit. That is gigantic.
That is going to be huge, and hopefully it turns out good for us and for the
Yeah.
workers who are looking for and needing jobs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And I definitely get the feeling that there's kind of like a like it or lump it attitude
Hmm.
for the AI purveyors. Like, yeah, we're going forward. It's full steam ahead. Let's just go
Right.
forward. And so that's been a topic of conversation that I've had with a lot of people as well. Is kind of there's these AI gatekeepers, the ATS systems,
Hmm.
as you apply for work that we have no control over. We've got no way of like insight into trying to figure out like how to get around them. And that's really confounding to a lot of people. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, thinking about it, it's like really the last, however long I've been, looking for jobs. Um, Very recently, the only roles I've gotten interviews for has been where I've had connections inside. And that is, you know, I've heard different things. Oh, well, it doesn't make a difference. Like I'm looking at my data, it's like, all right, yes, not every place I've had an insider I've gotten an interview with. But all the ones I've gotten an interview with is because I've been able to reach out directly.
Yeah.
And even places I don't have, whereas I've reached out to somebody posted on, hey, I'm looking for, it's like I reach out to them. It's like I don't hear anything back from them because they're inundated. And that's, and how much of that are the bots attacking, just swamping and looking for keywords. I mean, I did the open to work. I turned it off and then turned it back on again recently. And within 2 minutes, I've had a bunch of people air quotes, reposting me say, "Hey, I have a great role for you. Well, let's connect." And I'm like, "You're not even reaching out to me as I know you're a bot." So, you know, so these things that AI that's supposed to make things easier is turning things upside down and actually going back to what we saw, takes away communication, takes away that connectivity. And, as a leader, somebody who wants to be a leader, you you're not a leader if you're not making human connections. And that's some of the things, for those who can't see, I have a poster at the background for one of my talks I do on leadership. And it's you, yeah, you need to deliver results. But what I also have learned from all my experiences is that the more effort you put in human connection, the greater return you actually get.
Actually, I would love to get you to walk me through your diagram.
One of the things I do is I've you know, done some public speaking on leadership. And I'm a big fan of the show Ted Lasso. The jersey I'm wearing is Ted Lasso AFC Richmond. That's added to my collection of kits. But the talk I do is about leadership to believe in. But then it's evolved from Scrum Master focus to leadership. And I used to believe as the acronym. So, we can call it the seven pillars of impactful leadership. Believe in your people, and that goes to help wanting them to be the best versions of themselves. We'll backtrack. The leadership, human connection versus delivering results, right? Where I said the impact of having that human connection has a greater ROI. So you want them to be the best version of themselves. So that's belief, which leads to enabling. Now you have to help them become the best version of themselves. How do you get them to a point where you're going to allow them to do great things and challenge them to take that extra step where they want to go in a way where it's not success if that's just a result. Success and failure is a result, but making sure they do it. Right. And then as a leader, you want to understand your limits, where the limits of your knowledge, limits of your ability, but also limits of your authority. Are you stepping in to solve problems, which is a common thing for Scrum Masters. So there's where limits are. Eyes for inclusion. How do you include the people within your organization and what your product team's doing or whatever you're building? Not just, you know, those around you in terms of development, testers, designers, along the horizontal, but what about the hierarchy? What about the directors and the C-suite, but also what about the people, I don't want to use the term beneath, but what about the people who are not part of the team or under the team? So how do you bring everybody in together to get their ideas? Because everybody has different perspectives. It's like, all right, well, we just care about the developers. We're just siloed. Well, you're not building a team. So from there, you want to look at empathy. We talked about that. Talked about empathizing with HR. You know, that's a huge thing right now. They're getting inundated. So I don't blame HR for what's happening because they're not the ones admitted. I feel bad. I feel, not feel sorry for them, but I can understand how overwhelmed they are, which is why a lot of people are like, if somebody recommends somebody, I know them, I trust them. It's easier to quantify that versus something that's scanned through AI even. So there's the empathy and then vulnerability as a leader. You got to be allow your vulnerability to exist, that psychological safety in your team, because and I've seen it. The biggest gain a team's ever made for me has been when they've opened up and been vulnerable with each other and with me. And that started with me opening up about my struggles as their leader. And then, the last E is ego. Allowing the unhealthy ego to get in your way. You need validation. You're looking for the rewards and the accolades. But then the focus becomes you and not the team and what you've done. And that's, somebody who tries to be egoless. Everybody's got an ego. Everybody says everybody has one. We accept it. It's the unhealthy one that we want to control because when it controls us, we're not getting the feedback we need to improve and get better. So, so that's where the talk that's the quick down and dirty parts of the talk is those things. And I use, questions to kind of allow people to think about their journey into leadership. And it's not just engineering managers or directors. This is also just team leads. Software developers who aren't managers are leaders.
Yeah, I've
So
heard this before as well. That this is that these kind of job titles are not indicative of the work that we've been doing.
I was going to say, yeah, and you kind of hit it too with the job titles. Is that's what drew me to Sarah Beth Burke Bickerstaff is the more than my title. I've always been, yeah, I've done, this is my title, but I've always floated around the organization. I mean, one of my jobs is a Scrum Master. That's what you do, is you help your team deliver, not by managing the team, but by helping to create the environment. So I've never known how to express that in addition to all my other skills. My first job as a cartographer, now I'm all this other thing. So it's like,
Wow.
how do I explain? Yeah, I've been building product for 30 years pretty much. So how can I, so for me, it's like, how do I kind of put that together? Say, yes, I know how to build product. I know how to manage product when I've never been a product manager, so to speak. So,
Yeah, and Sarah Beth Burke Bickerton, it's kind of a mouthful. She does a really good job at explaining that hybrid roles, and like that really jibes with what I do. Yeah, I manage people, I code,
mhm,
I put together presentations, I get on sales calls. It's just what you need to do as an employee, and to have segmented into these boxes like what
mhm.
SBB says, those are no longer relevant. And I think that that is particularly true for us who have matured professionally.
Yeah, and I know we're of the same age, 51, 52-ish. So we're of that generation to you got in at a company and at the tail end of this is going to be a career. This is going to be potentially a place where I'm going to stay a long time. My first job, I was there 15 years, started as an intern. You're willing to do anything because the company, I know people hate this, but it, w- I don't want to say it was a family because people hate that term, but it's like
Yeah.
you were close. Why? Because you worked together. You were there all the time. You became friends. And yeah, like you said, oh, my job was a cartographer. But I didn't just make the maps. I did all kinds of research. I did all kinds of editing. I did this. I did that. I swept the floors for goodness sakes. Did what I needed to do. One of which because I started as an intern, where I'm happy to be working at this great company, and I'm going to do what I need to do, and it doesn't matter what it is. That's the type of attitude that you know I had growing up. That was what was instilled with me, my older brothers, and from my parents.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your family and the
Yeah,
roles you're looking for right now?
being, I've always wanted to make sure I can set my kids up for success and, getting them into college, getting them through college with as little debt as possible. But as everybody's kind of saying, it's like, well, that's our, not really a thing anymore. College is kind of going away. It's like, okay, so it's how do I transition that? How do I ensure that I can get my kids to the schools they want to do? My oldest daughter who's in college, she wants to be a vet. Well, you can't use AI for that yet. You can't, you need to learn this stuff, and that's a lot of schooling. Great. My other daughter's looking into engineer because she's really good at math and science. So great. But, not software engineering, what kind of engineering? So she's still gonna have to go to college. So part of me is like, I need a role. I want stability to be able to afford to send them out. I'd love to be able to, upgrade my LLC and be able to focus on that.
Yeah.
But it's the chicken and the egg because it's like, all right, in order to do that, I need the steady job. Because then after that, I can build that LLC up to a point where, okay, then if I ever lose my steady job, I can either fall back on that or use that as the gateway into through the connections I make and everything to find my next role. So I'm not in a position like I am now where I'm, between layoffs and whatnot, I'm out of job every other year. So I'm a job hopper, but not by my intent.
Right, not by
and through
choice.
and through no fault of my own either. That's
Mhm.
the other aspect, and that's the emotional part is I have to kind of remember it's like this wasn't personal. This is all business. So these layoffs, these way they're going, the company I was at last year that got are getting rid of a lot of full-time employees, going to the cheaper contractors, whether it's because of section that tax thing that we talked about, 174 or whatever it is, where
Right.
um,
The
whether that's
R
really
and D, yeah.
yeah, whether that's playing part of it or not. But so for me, it's with my family. All right, I gotta. I was, making a lot more than my wife, so that's a big chunk of it. Being where we are with the kid, one kid in, one kid about to go, and then I have a third one who's still in middle school. How do we get that up? We're getting to the point where it's like, all right, we're gonna have to start making some really tough decisions. We still want to give them, you know, good social lives. They're all in sports, so we want to keep them doing that. We want to make sure it doesn't impact them as badly. But, you know, what do we do with the house? What do we do with this? What do we
Yeah.
do with the cars? Do we, if I'm not working anywhere, do I sell my car? Do I start selling things off? I have a nice desk here, but it's worth a couple $100. Yeah. So those are actually decisions that like, all right, well, I'm only making X amount through unemployment. So if I sell this, and this, I can gain a month's worth of unemployment type of thing. So,
And maybe
do I
that's
shut?
enough runway
Maybe
to
that's not, maybe that's a little extra, and oh, close off my LLC and that stuff.
yeah.
So, it's a lot of hard decisions for us to make. And I know that other people are in better shape than we are. There's people who are far worse than me. So I count my blessings that you know I have I have my in-laws are 3 miles down the road and they're tremendous help. I can't I'm totally blessed with that. My kids have been very supportive, as is my wife. So eh, I'm better off than others. I'm worse off than some. Uh, all I can do is just try to be better than I was and try to figure it out. Not every company's as cynical and as bad as I've talked about, I've kind of laid into. Um, but it's still very hard to find that role, find the job where I can get in, find that connect, make that connection to kind of, hey, here's somebody who's you know, going to make a difference to us.
Yeah. Then that's really well said. And it's so hard to keep that perspective as you're getting up for yet another day of those auto rejections of like, maybe maybe you're gonna actually talk to somebody
Hey,
like go and maybe change some spelling on your LinkedIn profile and maybe that'll help.
yeah,
Like just another day of that. We've got to be able to fall back on that support system that we have. You had mentioned that your wife was working at some place for like 25 years, and that is becoming kind of a liability. What did you mean by that?
um, yeah. So she's been at the the local hospital for that's been basically her only job is she's worked there. She's in a number of different roles. But as the healthcare system has evolved, a lot of the smaller hospitals or even bigger hospitals in certain areas, they're not privately owned. They're being kind of acquired by universities. So, in Pennsylvania, where we have UPMC, which is out of Pittsburgh, you have, Hershey, Penn State Hershey, you have, Penn Medicine out in Philly. So you have all these universities who are buying them up. But with the economy, with all the stuff, with all the healthcare thing, organizations as they acquire, what are you going to do? You're going to standardize things. So, you know, where she was working at the hospital in our part of Central PA, okay, it's great when we have a system that works great for us. Well, now Penn's kind of saying we want this, so we don't need two different versions. So we're going to, consolidate and standardize things, which is all well and good. That's what you want. It's a bit of efficiency. But where the liability I was talking about comes in, because she's been there so long, she's at a higher rate than others. It's like, all right, well, if you're going to target, we don't need all these system admins. We don't need all of them. So you get rid of one or two. Well, then me and now puts her on the chopping block, as opposed to this person's been here 20 years versus somebody who's been here three. We might keep, the person who's been there a long time. Now it's like she's not so sure, so she's worried about that.
How do you how do you talk to your kids about the job search and those challenges and trying to figure out what work looks like for them as they're going through college, as they're, coming up to college?
I have an approach that, two different angles on that is for them. So, well, my oldest, we haven't worried about that because, like I said, she wants to be a vet. So that's a different type of field. So that's a different challenge, and there is requirements within the education. So I haven't kind of approached that. I have no idea what my son wants to be other than a professional baseball player. It's like I'm like
Go for it.
dude, I'm 5'7". You're not going to be, you're not going to be somebody that Scott's really going to be looking at. I'm sorry, I hate to say that. Um, but maybe I'm hoping he proves me wrong. But if, so we haven't approached that. But the other aspect is trying to keep, the fear and tension as low as possible. I can't say, keep it out because it's my wife's a worrier. I'm a worrier. So you know, this thing is every day. This is in our conversations. It's very, we do have some tension in our conversations.
Oh yeah.
It's like trying to make sure that they still can do the things they want to do, but making sure we know we have to peel things back because, we need to conserve, because of this situation that's happening. And like I said, I've bounced through a few jobs. Like I said, I've been through a company that cut all the agilists out, so I was out of work there. And so this is kind of a bit of I don't want to say pattern. I don't like the pattern, but this has happened more than once where, all right, we gotta have to go into a bit of a conserve mode because I have to find something. This is the one where it's a little more scarier because age, what's career transition, what I really want to do. Because again, cartographer mostly gone, Scrum Master mostly gone, going away. There's a few here and there that that might have the title but aren't really Scrum Masters. So it's like, okay, well, I got to find something, but what is that something? And that's kind of where have a trouble. I would love to kind of build up my leadership to believe in course and things like that. I don't have the time because I need to find the job. So the quickest way to find the job is find a Scrum Master role, even if it's a job I know I'm going to hate, which is where I was, you know, last year. I did find a job. I was like, I didn't like the job. I didn't like going in, but I had to take it, and it wasn't a match. So I kind of added, all right, well, glimmer of hope. But then real quick, they pulled the like, you were really an end of year hire anyway. We just need we need to justify the budget going forward at the end of the year with our client. It was a consultancy, so
Eh,
it leaves me in a situation where it's like I'm going to have to go through this again, where I have to find a role where I'm probably not going to like, and that's where it's like take it so long. I said I was didn't want to go through that again. So the first part of after losing that role is I'm going to find a role that I can do. Well, I real quick saw that the environment changed. This is springtime. All of a sudden, things looked iffy between November and January. Things looked really good real quick, and then it was like all of a sudden it was like boom, the rug came out, and everything just changed. And it's like, what do we do now? And it's like I'm in a role of adaptability and everything. It's great, but now it's like I don't even know. A lot of times it's like I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And that's the challenge, is how can I find a role?
Our topographical map of this job search is one of lines describing the peaks and valleys of opportunities and gatekeepers. We have some power to shape this landscape with our opinions and interactions, but unlike a roadmap, there is no direct route and certainly no highway for careers. Thanks, Matt, for bringing up so many valuable points and insights into your job search and our collective landscape. This interview was conducted over Zoom from Seattle, Washington, and York, Pennsylvania. If you have questions or comments, please reach out to me via email at lucas.smith.development@gmail.com. And until next time, keep fighting the good fight. I will. I'm not retired yet.